we were so lucky to have Bite Me come through the micro cinema in Wichita last summer. Bill, I know you were there, and it was just such a fun time and so inspiring. And it was fun again to watch the film this afternoon. Inspired me to put on lipstick, which I haven't done in like a year. So thank you all for joining us. And I just want to start off by talking a little bit about, well, first of all, let's introduce everyone from the team. How about that? Naomi, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm Naomi McDougall-Jones, and I wrote the film, and I play Sarah in it, and I was one of the producers of the film. And I'm calling in from Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay, should I just go down my grid? Sarah?
Yeah, I'm Sarah Wharton, and I'm one of the producers, and I'm here in Astoria, New York City.
Mahira?
Hi, I'm Mahira. Yeah, hi, it's so nice to meet you. I played Lily in Bite Me, and I'm calling in from New York.
Hey. Christian?
Hey, I'm Christian. I play James in the movie, and I'm also in New York.
Naomi Grossman?
Yes, I'm the other Naomi, played Christy, and calling in from Los Angeles.
Yay. Meredith?
Hey, I'm Meredith Edwards, and I directed the film. And I'm in LA, Los Angeles also.
Yay. Is that everybody? Ashley, you're just joining? Yay. Okay, great. Wonderful. So I guess I just want to start off by saying again how fun it was to watch this again this afternoon. Just nice to take us out of this dreary, crazy time that we're living in. And I just love the whole thing about the whole journey with this film, from like your script through the way you distributed it. And Naomi McDougall-Jones, since you're the writer, do you want to talk a little bit about the impetus for the story?
Sure. So I think that the seed came from two things. One is that I love romantic comedies a lot, but like from the 80s and 90s when they were actually just good movies and smart and funny and original, and not like what happened to the genre after Katherine Heigl, like sort of like the 27 Dresses horrible fluff channel. So I really wanted to make a great romantic comedy that was all those things, but also updating it, because what I found in trying to write a rom-com now was that the world has become really cynical since then, and that the sort of like giddy, optimistic joy that fuels great rom-coms doesn't play anymore unless you can sort of bring the audience into the journey with you, and like you can't just assume that they're ready to go on that journey with you. And so then I was sort of trying to figure out what the window into that was, and I was acting on the set of Boardwalk Empire one day and got chatting with one of the extras on set, who over the course of like the 16-hour shoot day revealed to me that she was a vampire, a real life vampire. And I was like, what? And so then she told me about the real life community of people who identify as vampires. And I just fell down the internet rabbit hole of researching them and became so fascinated and kind of inspired by this community of people who live this lifestyle, often to the extent of getting ostracized from their families and friends, and but building this own community and this own family themselves. And so that seemed like an interesting way into the rom-com.
That's fascinating. And we will talk a little bit more later, I guess, about the vampires you may have met along the way on your travels. But I mean, did you write it with knowing that you were going to play the role of Sarah?
Yep.
And did you know that you wouldn't be directing it?
Yeah, I'm not a director, and Meredith had directed my first film, and I actually loved the experience so much of turning something I've written and am in and am a producer on so much to somebody else, because it feels like, it's sort of like a sand mandala moment when this project that you have spent years of your life on, and like this script I rewrote 48 times over years and like sweated and strove over and bled over, and suddenly the first day on set, like suddenly it's like this, it turns into this thing that is so much bigger than me or my idea, and suddenly like all of these other grown-ups are running around building sets or building props just because I wrote the words on the page, and other grown-ups are turning into characters that like I thought of in my living room, and this other person, Meredith, is now, it's now her ship, and I'm just now this little cog in this way bigger thing, and I love that feeling enormously.
Can I quick interrupt you?
Yes.
Only because my mom, who, as you know, is the biggest fan of this film ever. You met her when you were in Santa Fe. She's calling because the Zoom link you guys initially put on the Facebook invite, I guess, wasn't working. Isn't that right? You texted me another Zoom that I did use.
Yeah.
So it might behoove us, if there are people actually like
the link isn't working on the website anymore, on the mamafilm website. I know that. In case anyone's going to the email.
I don't know if people are trying to get in, but there is one woman in Taos, New Mexico, who I can tell is desperate to hear every word.
Can you send her the link that Naomi?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I updated it on the website too. Sorry, guys.
No worries. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Oh
no, please, that's great.
I'll do that, and then I'll be right back. I'm a little challenged myself, but okay.
So Meredith, at what point, and Sarah, as a producer, at what point did you come into the process of this project?
I came on board, I think, about a year before we shot the film. The process of developing indie film is long and winding, and Naomi and I sort of like went through many versions of what this movie could be before we landed with the team that we had. And Naomi had even been working on it way before I had, with Jack Leshner, our executive producer. And so, but as things tend to do, I think we landed with exactly the right team of people and exactly the movie that we were supposed to make.
Yeah, I'll just add to that I think I came on in February, and we were supposed to, and Naomi, you might want to correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't I on initially in February and we were supposed to shoot in April?
I think you came out in March and we were initially supposed to shoot in April.
Yeah, it was like, or I think it was like the end of February, March. But then we gratefully pushed to shoot in the summer. So we had a little bit more time to prep and work some things out and get the locations we wanted and raise the funds and do all the things that you must do for indie production.
So what about the casting process? Can you talk a little bit about the casting process? Because you have a great cast and your film is so diverse and inclusive. And I feel like it does that really beautifully there's so many projects now that I think do that so obviously. And yours seems very natural. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Meredith, you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, when I came on, the leads were already cast. And so I was kind of like, great, perfect. This is amazing. I love these people. And then we worked with the casting director for the rest of the roles. We had a really interesting experience with the actor who played Stas. We actually met him when we were casting for it was like one of the ball players, right, Naomi?
Yeah, I think one of the ancillary vampire characters.
Yeah, and this amazing presence just walked into the room, fully tattooed and just this fierce look, and we were like, I think you are someone else in the show. And so, and he ended up playing Stas. I don't know if, Sarah, you want to talk more about the lead roles that were already cast before I came on.
Sure. Yeah, it was another sort of winding process. And Jack Lechner, our executive producer, said very early on in the process that the way that you make a film ends up aligning itself with the story that's in the movie. And so this whole project became about assembling our band of weirdos. And if you weren't a weirdo in the right way, and I say that with like all of the love because I'm one of them for sure, you were not the right person for this movie. So we were so lucky to find Naomi Grossman and Christian and Annie Golden and Mahira. I think casting the leads really felt like people either super connected with the script or they just didn't quite get it. And I think Naomi and Kristen and Mahira, I don't know if you want to talk about like what it was that really sparked for you when you read these characters.
And I'll say Naomi Grossman, I actually wrote the Naomi Grossman story. Is funny because I actually wrote Chrissy with Naomi Grossman in my head. I didn't know her at the time, but we had a mutual friend, and so I was certainly aware of Naomi's work. And like, there's something about Naomi's sort of kinetic energy that is that in every reading that we did of the script, with various actors over the years, like that was the one role that never really worked. Because I was imagining this like ball of kinetic energy that is like a very specific thing. And so we were very, very lucky to get Naomi, because there weren't that many people down the list that could have done that thing.
I love this story. Yeah, well, and I have a real background in comedy, and yet I haven't been cast. No one knows that about me. It's sort of my secret power, my superpower. So I haven't spoken to like people in a long time. So this is, if things come out funny, that's why. No, but so it was exciting for me to kind of marry, my true love, comedy, and I wouldn't call Bite Me horror, but the sort of like horror adjacent, vampires, kind of genre stuff, which I'm more known for. It was exciting to kind of marry the two, and again, finally for the first time, like be able to like share with the world that I have this other thing I can do.
Yeah, it was a great performance. And Christian, what about you? How did the script come to you, and how did it?
I was my agent or my manager passed it on to me and asked me to read it, and I just immediately really I just really dug the story. It was like I felt connected to James, and I really loved the writing. And then I sat down, Naomi and I sat down, and just Naomi answered all my questions and I answered hers, and we like talked about ideas around the film and like what it was sparking off in us, and the two of us got on, and I was like, this feels like something really that I want to be a part of.
And my side of it, so the reason that Meredith wasn't involved at this point was there was actually another director attached who ended up leaving the project, and then Meredith, who again in the process was 100% the right person, came on at the right moment. But so that we'd gone through this process before we had Meredith, and so we were talking a lot about James and who the right person was, and these ideas. And when we found out that Christian was interested, we were so excited and also nervous that he was too good looking for the part. And I was like, I don't know, nobody's gonna buy that this guy's like a lonely weirdo. And so I went to that meeting sort of like excited, but also worried about that. And then I met Christian, like,
You're like, everyone will buy that he's a lonely weirdo.
No, I was like, he is really good looking, but he's got this like this secret little weirdo piece of.
It's true. It's not. You're not wrong.
And an edge. Christian had an edginess that I
Mhm.
thought worked really well for James too, that brought a little more depth to the character, I thought.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
And Mahira, how about you?
Yeah, Naomi sent me the script and said that she wanted me to audition for it. And initially I thought the dates wouldn't work out, I think. And then fortuitously they did. And I read it and I thought I really like this woman. I relate to her. I relate to the feeling of sort of being being an outsider and finding one's tribe, and then holding them really close and hard. So yeah, that was what appealed to me about it.
Can we talk a little bit about like the production of it? How long did you shoot for? And you shot in New York.
Yeah, we shot for 21 days, all in New York City. And I think whenever anyone sees the film and then learns that, how little time we had, and the fact that we were also dealing with New York City, which from a production standpoint always complicates things because you could spend a whole day just trying to park your trucks. I think people are amazed to see what we pulled off.
Were there any specific challenges or stories from the production that stand out to any of you?
Floating on a lake, trying to keep the background consistent while floating on a lake.
Anyone else have any scenes or challenges that stood out to them?
Finding our court of dreams was a challenge, and I remember that Meredith's partner at the time knew of this place that we ended up shooting, the Angel Orange Sand Center, because Meredith had put it in her lookbook, and I think he recognized it as a real place. Am I right about that, Meredith?
Yeah, and not knowing. When I pulled that image, I was just doing like a big, brainstorm of all these images, and I found all these images of Angel Orange Sands, and I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. And I put them in the lookbook, not knowing that it was Angel Orange Sands, not knowing that it was in the Lower East Side of New York City where we were shooting, not knowing any of that. And then Eric, my partner at the time, who also did the music, looked at it and was like, that's it, because he used to live like across the street from it. That's Angel Orange Sands, and they're really good about working with indie filmmakers. Because it's been around for a long time. It's like a New York City staple. So they've done things from like weddings, like Sarah Jessica Parker's wedding, to our little indie, where they're making way less money, I'm sure. But they were really great about working with us, right, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that since it is such a huge venue, and because like people like Sarah Jessica Parker had been married there, that like sure, places say that they're indie friendly, and then you go and you ask them and they don't really understand what level of indie you're on. But we went and we visited, and they were so wonderful. And I remember going to check it out with Meredith and our DP Una Lee, and Meredith fell on her knees. Because it was so perfect, and it absolutely makes that scene. I think when you watch the movie and that first reveal of Sarah and James and Chrissy entering the ball is like, it's magical.
Yeah, and I think that's one amazing thing about New York. There are so many special places there that are very hard to create, and they just are there. And I think it was important for that scene specifically to have this grandiose experience, particularly for James's character when he walks in, like where he's kind of out of his element, but is also like he's full of excitement from the grandeur of this party. So it was important that we had a place that kind of hit you in that way.
Yeah, that's kind of in the kismet of independent film when that all comes together. Naomi?
Yeah. The day that sticks out for me was the day that we were shooting the big IRS picnic scene in Central Park, because the way that permitting in Central Park works is that it's sort of divided into a bunch of different fiefdoms, and a different person is in charge of whether or not you get to shoot like each tiny little section of Central Park. So I think we had to, Sarah, you'll remember better, but I think we had to get like multiple people to agree to let us shoot in order to be able to shoot in this area that wasn't that big. So Sarah made that happen, and it was so exciting. And then, but we had chosen like a Tuesday to shoot the scene in the middle of the day, thinking, well, at least there will be fewer people, passerbys, than normal on a Tuesday. And then we got there a couple days before we realized that it was the day of the solar eclipse. And so, like, everybody in New York was in Central Park to watch the eclipse, and we were all there in vampire costumes. and like everybody was sort of like kept wandering up to our PAs and being like, is this for the eclipse? Like, what is that? And Annie Golden screamed at some people at one point, which was very fun.
Rightfully so. They were being very rude and just coming up and taking pictures of her without asking.
Yeah. It was mayhem.
That was my first day on set. It was,
oh my God, that's right.
It was and standing on coolers and, you know, and there was this, I don't know, it's also like I was in this huge group of, you know, New York actors. And I mean, you know, these are like true thespians. These are not just like little career extras in Hollywood. These are like, they're acting their asses off. Like, you know, the background, like they're this big on the screen, but they're like giving you so much.
Yeah.
And so there's this whole like, you know, layer of like Christians and vampires. And then there's all the rest of the world, you know, that's like gathered for this, you know, one time the solar event. It was a lot. It was like, all right, we're doing this.
And the extras in that scene were so committed.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Especially your husband, Naomi. He goes in my book as the #1 extra.
He still tells people that, because you said that to him, and he still tells people that the director of Bite Me said that he was the #1 extra.
So what did he do to make himself the #1 extra?
Oh, he was getting dragged on the ground. He had like dirt stains like all over his nice collared shirt, because I think he played an IRS agent or a Christian.
No, he played an IRS agent who got attacked by 2 vampires.
Yeah, and he was like literally dragged on the ground and was like, I mean, I think it was real, so he didn't have to try very hard to make it look real.
For those of you actors in the room, can you just talk a little bit about the differences working like on an independent film set versus working on a, you know, bigger budget set, and maybe how you connect differently with your team and your crew?
I mean, the real difference is just money. You know what I mean? Like, you know, a big budget production has time to waste, to pay for, you know? So it was really just like a matter of having to be really efficient, because there's just not time to light and to shoot and to make up and to, you know, all that. So, I mean, I think the actual work is really no different. It's just a matter of, you know, how much are we going to pay to make this happen, and how long can we afford to wait to make it happen? Because, you know, a set, it's all just hurry up and wait. So in this case, it was more hurry up than anything. But that's indie film for you, you know.
So the actors, do you have, I mean, obviously there is, when you're on a bigger budget and you're getting better food and you're getting paid and you're waiting around, there's something to that. But what is the beauty of working in independent film in that space?
They were just wishing they were on the nicer set the whole time.
No, you know what it felt that this, I don't know if it was true for everyone, but I imagine so. It felt like deeply collaborative, this process, which is not always how, particularly the more money involved on a movie, usually the less it feels, the more it feels like it's being dictated from the top down by the money people, because they're protecting their money. And it's like it's such a different experience to be so, involved. This felt very involving to me. I felt really like part of a crew rather than like an actor who's shuffled on at the last minute to sort of do the thing. It felt like a process that was involving everyone. But I can't speak for other people's experience of that. That was, and I don't know if that's true of every indie movie either. That was certainly true of this movie. I think that speaks more probably to Meredith and Sarah and Naomi creating this environment of like collaborative work on set.
That's wonderful. So you had one of the most amazing things about this film, I think, is how you all, especially the producing team, decided to distribute the film. I know that you premiered the film at CineQuest, yes, last was it last spring?
Yes. Yeah?
A year ago, yeah. And obviously the festival landscape looks a lot different at the moment. But what was the decision behind taking the film on tour? And did you play as many festivals, or how did you decide to do this? Because it really was so cool to watch.
Sarah?
You should go for it.
Okay. Well, so basically, both Sarah and I had past experiences producing films where in true indie films where you would play a lot of festivals, and that would be really fun, and it would feel really good, and it would be exciting, and people would be so excited, and you might get a distribution deal out of that, and we actually always did, but then you would turn it over to this other company who, even if they were really good, didn't care about your film as much as you did and didn't necessarily put in the time. Because I think the way that distribution companies work with indie films at this point is they're basically playing a numbers game. Like they just try to acquire as many films as they can at a certain caliber, but still, and basically just pump them into the marketplace, assuming that they'll make sort of enough little money off all of the films that they will be able to keep their lights on, but not really putting the time and energy into truly marketing a film, which at this point, because the physical act of getting your film to an audience is so easy now, what distribution companies really should be are marketing companies, because that's the whole thing. Like it's anybody can get their film on iTunes, but can you market it so that people will actually watch it? And what we had found is that for most distribution companies, the answer to that question is no, like they haven't pivoted yet to become marketing companies. And so what would happen is you'd get very bad financial results. Really most of the money would get eaten up by the fees of the distribution company and the aggregators and the sales agents. And so you'd have had a really good time from a financial perspective. You would be in the lurch, and also like maybe just also not really have, because the nature of festivals is that you just get in where you get in. And so you might have screened in places where your fans were not. And so they may never have gotten to have the experience with you. And like you're just sort of at the mercy of all these other forces. So when it came time for this film, we started going down that old road again. And then Sarah and I just kept being like, this feels so bad. Like this, we've worked so hard in this film and we think it's so good. And we know that there's an audience for it and we know who they are and we know where they live. And like just sort of turning it over to these other forces again just felt really bad and wrong. And so what actually happened is I had a dream that we were in an RV with fangs on it, driving around the country on something called the Joyful Vampire Tour of America. And I called Sarah the next morning and I said, okay, maybe this isn't the same. What if we just did this? And because she's the greatest producer in the world, she's like, that sounds awesome. And so we talked to a number of different friends who were filmmakers or distributors or sort of like just to test the idea out. and see if it sounded insane to them. And mostly the response was, well, nothing else is working right now for indie films, so you may as well try it. And so Sarah then spent her spring with a team of interns booking theaters and renting an RV and making it happen. And then we did a 51 screening, 40 city, 3-month tour. We drove 13,001 miles around the country, myself and my husband and a documentary filmmaker, Kiwi Callahan, who made a documentary in real time, week by week, of the whole thing as it unfolded, which is still on YouTube and people are able to follow. And it is one of the most fun things that has ever happened.
It's wonderful. Yes, I really enjoyed it.
Yay.
It sounded like worse than the Corona apocalypse to me, but I enjoyed watching. I enjoyed not being in the actual RV.
Do you have the link to the YouTube that you can drop in the chat, or you can go look for it too? But it was so cool to watch every week, and then all of the data that you gathered afterwards. And now thinking about the way that, all these movie theaters are shuttered and film festivals are canceled. I mean, I have a feeling that they're going to have to start becoming these marketing companies if they haven't been.
Yeah, and I think I think actually what's happening right now is opening up this major opportunity to a landscape that was so broken before, in terms of film distribution, because we are in the process of and going to have to continue reinventing everything about how we do everything in the world. And I think within that chaos does emerge an opportunity to invent new models, and hopefully models that work better for audiences and also better for filmmakers, and hopefully improve the revenue streams for indie film, which at the moment are quite abysmal.
Yes. Yeah, I do think that there are some opportunities that will come of this as well.
And I think what you're doing is, I was so excited to see this model and what you're doing, because I think not every filmmaker can move into an RV and for 3 months and do what we did. But I think the core of what we discovered is that stories are about connection. And if you can do that, ideally in real space, but we'll see what the world looks like, and maybe that just will not be possible for a long time. But if you can enhance that human connectivity and give people a chance and the artists a chance to connect with each other over the work, it's so much more meaningful than just sending the work out on its own.
Absolutely. I totally agree. There's so much connecting to be had around, especially cinema. What were some of the highlights from the tour? And did any of you go on the tour at different parts of the tour?
The RV wasn't that big.
Well, I did see it. I know that.
But we met up. Everybody participated in the parts of the tour that they were where they lived already.
I had cousins go everywhere.
That's
from New Orleans to San Francisco to you name it. I was representing.
Yeah.
Nice.
And of course, when they came to LA, I was there, of course, in full vampire drag.
Yeah. This became a running joke of the tour that at almost every screening, somebody would come up to us and be like, "I'm Naomi Grossman's cousin," and we're like, "How many cousins does she have?" It was amazing.
Well, I had more, but they're not my cousins anymore. They didn't show. They're off the list.
Dead to me.
Yeah.
So what were some of the, and if you watch the YouTube documentary, which is great, you'll be able to see some of the highlights, but who were some of the most interesting people that you met? And what were some of the most interesting places that you went?
By the way, speaking of interesting people that we met, and not cousins, but Mom, she just joined. I'm very excited. This is major.
Hey, Mom.
She doesn't know how to do these things. So,
welcome,
hi, Mom.
Mom. Thank you for joining us.
Sorry. Interesting people.
I love it. Yeah, interesting people and crazy places that you were you wouldn't have thought that maybe this movie would have been the success that it was.
Well, I think in terms of it, I mean, the whole thing was just amazing, and you do get a little bit of this in watching the docuseries, but like just getting to meet people in their lives all over the country for 3 months, like it gave me this feeling of citizenship in this country in a way that I'd never really had before. And like, because we were in this RV, but so often people would generously invite us into their homes to stay for the night, or at least let us park their RV in their driveway. And just sort of getting to drop into these people's lives who we didn't know, and sort of see their lives and share the film with them and talk to them about it was just fascinating the whole time. I think the most interesting people we met were probably the real vampires that we met in a surprising number of locations all over the country who came out for the film, which was very exciting for me because as I hadn't been able to sort of penetrate that community beforehand. I had tried, but not gotten a response, because I think initially they were very suspicious that the film would be making fun of them, or not being respectful of their lifestyle, which it is. And so I most of my vampire research, which was extensive, was on their YouTube vlogs or in books that they'd written, but it was from a distance. And so, but then the film came out, and a couple of vampires watched it and sort of said, no, this is cool. And so all across the country, real vampires came out to screenings. And that was so cool. And it was so gratifying and fun to hear over and over them say, like, how did you know? This is exactly what it's like. And for them to feel seen and respected, and like so many of them said, like, people don't understand what our lives are like, and now we can be like, just watch this movie. This is what our lives are like. So that was really, really fun and exciting.
What about some cities that you went to that you were just like, wow?
Well, Wichita was big on that list. I've been saying to everybody that I feel like, thinking about indie film distribution, we should make sort of like, we should figure out what the algorithm of Wichita is, because that was one of our favorite screenings, and I think it's like, it's a big enough place, but not so big like New York or Los Angeles, where everybody's just completely overwhelmed with stuff all of the time. And so, like, I feel like Boise, Idaho probably occupies a similar space, and like, those are the cities that we should be going to. And I think it's such an oversight that indie films generally play in New York or LA, because like, nobody gives a shit. You know, like maybe people will come out to be nice to you, but like, you know, everybody has 7,000 film screenings specifically to go to every night. And so definitely places like Wichita. Also the smaller towns, like one of the other best screenings was in Vicksburg, Mississippi, which was, I had never been to the state of Mississippi before, none of us had. And, but we got invited by this man, Daniel Boone, who owns a theater down there. And he was like, you have to come to Mississippi. And I was like, really? And he's like, believe me, come to Mississippi. I was like, okay. But I remember as we were driving into the state in our RV with the fangs on the front, I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea. And, you know, it's a super feminist movie and pretty, you know, edgy in a way. And I was just really nervous what the response was going to be. But we pulled into Vicksburg, and Daniel Boone and the man Jack, who he owns the theater with, had painted an entire side of their building with our poster image advertising the film. And every single person in that audience came in costume. It was our only 100% costume participation place. And it was so moving, because like, to be a weirdo in Vicksburg, Mississippi is such a bigger deal than it is in New York or LA. And so like, this was a place where the weirdos got to come out of the woodwork, be in costume together, and sort of have this space to just feel free in that. And it was so beautiful.
Well, and in LA and New York, it's like so ho-hum to have like the full cast, right, you know, for a Q&A after. It's like, I don't go to the movies without like Brad Pitt there to like, you know what I mean? Whereas this, in Mississippi, I'm sure that was a very big deal to have like had vampire like on the stage to like answer your every question after. Wow, that's
right. And it's like, oh, you're in the magic box, like you must be famous, like I may as well, you know. So it was, yeah, it was just, and it the whole tour reminded me so much of how much we're missing the point in our industry so often of why we're doing this, and we get so wrapped up in our New York and LA bubbles, and like people in the middle of the country are very like, A, they feel so unseen by us, which they are for the most part, and B, they feel just so disconnected. But to be able to go there and listen to what people thought of the film all over the country, I feel like has made me a better filmmaker and a better writer. And we need to be doing so much more of that. I just started having this vision of, if we could start like an Oregon Trail of sending indie filmmakers through the country, that it would completely change the country, because it would like be this flow of ideas and humanity sort of like crossing those barriers in the country.
I think in a lot, in the middle of the country especially, there's this sort of misnomer that indie film means just bad. You know what I mean? Whereas, I mean, you're doing a true service for indie film, like showing them that's not necessarily the case.
What's so interesting on the tour is so many times after screenings, somebody in the audience would come up to me and say, "This movie was so good. It's like it wasn't even an independent film." And I'm like, what does independent film mean to you? And I think it's like boring, depressing, slow is like what they feel.
Black and white, subtitles,
right?
Experimental.
Yeah. Like it's going to be a real drag to get through. Like, so I feel like we need to rebrand and then send people through the country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
You did.
Yeah, and I love your idea about sending filmmakers on the Oregon Trail of, you know, screenings when we can do that again.
Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, I grew up on the East Coast, and I lived in LA for a long time, and I've been here for about 10 years. And it is a treat, and it is special when people come through, and you know, you're right about people here not being jaded by like film. And I think it's so cool that you did that and that you showed up for them. And I think that made such a big difference in the perception of film, and, you know, gaining such an audience, and you're being so connected was really meant a lot to people. Bill, I know you were at the screening. I'm just going to call on you, but do you want to add in anything about your perception of it?
Well, I was impressed that they would be doing this, and then when they started talking about why they were doing it, the distribution and those kinds of things, it was really fascinating, and it made it. And I felt like there was a real connection because they were willing to do that from, you know, the East Coast or the West Coast, and come through these small towns to see what people are really like. And we're very much alike, but I don't think we get that perception a lot.
Yeah.
I just remember that, you know, you and your husband and Kiki were all just delightful.
Oh.
And just, you made the whole thing so much fun. You know, I felt sorry for the people who didn't come. So,
that's so nice. I thought you were so delightful too.
Well,
and I do, like, because of the subject matter of the film too, which is so much about, you know, sort of like everybody's just a giant weirdo trying to get through the day the best way they know how. And I like, that was also my experience of the country, is like how much like everybody just wants to be seen, and like to be able to actually see each other that way is so beautiful.
Well, I'm going to tell you this is a brief story from my job. So I've transitioned to home now, you know, as many of us have. But I used to work in an office, and there's this, she's a lesbian, and she sits in front of me, and she's about about 39. So when I came over and I was assigned the seat next to her, she said, my first thought was, oh, I'm going to have to sit next to this old guy. And so it wasn't very long before we became very fast friends. And we would give each other a hard time all day long, just back and forth. And somebody said, why do you talk to him like that? And her response was, because he doesn't curl up into a fetal position when I insult him. So, you know, it's that kind of a connection that we don't realize we're going to have with someone else until we actually meet them.
Yeah.
Especially right now, I think. I'm just going to switch gears a little bit. How has this changed the way that all of you feel about vampires?
Yeah.
I have to say that when I first found out about that community and started researching them, that I was like, I don't know about this, you know, like I was very interested but skeptical. And then the more I read the stories and the more I listened to them, and so many of them talk about like seeing human blood, like somebody get cut or something at like 5 years old, and feeling this compulsion to taste it, and like I don't know, like by the end of the whole thing, I was like, I don't, like, who am I to say that you don't need that? Like, it's very possible that you do. And also, again, just like whatever gets you through the day is so fine, as long as you're not hurting anybody.
Anyone else want to comment?
I mean, I'm trying everything to get through this corona apocalypse. I guess I could start drinking my own blood. It's like one of the few things I have left to try.
Christian's just sitting there shaking his head.
Oh no, I'm not shaking my head. I was listening. I was just thinking. I didn't even know vampires really existed as a thing. So, but I didn't have to embody one. So I guess my I'm trying to think what changed about my. Well, it's amazing that people do that, and whatever makes you happy, I guess.
Wonderful. I agree. Well, we're getting to the end of our hour, and I thank you all so much for joining us. I want to find out what everybody's working on next, where we can find any of your other projects online while we're in quarantine, how we can support you as artists. So we start with Naomi Grossman.
Oh, well, yeah, Hollywood's shut down with everything else. But I do have 2 projects coming out onto VOD next month. One is on April 7th, and the other is April 24th. They are Murder RX and 1BR. 1BR as in one bedroom. It's a kind of slasher horror film. I play the cult leader's wife. It's been around to a bazillion festivals. It's sort of the anti-Bite Me, not anti, but it's just like the other path, which has been sort of interesting to kind of watch as well. And then Murder RX is just kind of made for TV movie, although I guess whatever. Point is, it's going just straight to video, not doing the tour thing. Anyway, those will both come out next month, so we can watch them. Other than that, I'm working on my own next solo show, which you'd think I have all the time in the world to work on that now, but it's like so hard to sit down and do. It was so much easier when I had a million things to go do.
Yes.
Now that I have no distractions, I have no excuses, and it's really hard. But
are you able to type in the chat box here? Do you see?
Am I able?
I was going to ask you if you could type in the names of your projects so we could look them.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm on an iPhone. I could get my computer.
I'll do it for you, Naomi.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. That way we can come back to this and find them.
Oh, cool. Yes.
Yeah, Meredith, what are you working on next?
Yeah, well, I'm actually going to grad school to get my master's in clinical psychology here. Oh, I just lost the Zoom. Okay. Which is really exciting, and thankfully it's not canceled because of what's going on. It's just going to be online and remote. And so I start that in 2 weeks. So
that's a career pivot.
Well, you know what? It's not really, to be honest with you, the reason why I got into acting and directing to begin with was because of my fascination with the study of human behavior, which that's what psychology is.
Also, how to handle actors.
Exactly, Chris. And what's interesting is I think people think like, oh, I guess you're like pivoting, and I'm like, no, it's just going to make me a better director, and a better writer, and better with people, I think. So I still plan on, I'm continuing to write. I'm writing a feature that I've been sitting on for a while now. And yeah, I'm just taking one day at a time during this quarantine, which is like a global meditation, I feel like, because we're all being forced to like go within and just sit in the discomfort. There's been a lot of mirrors making us all face some things. So sending love to everyone. And I just want to say before I get off, thanks for having this. This is really great. And I think such a service to how we can connect during this time.
Awesome. And the film that you and Naomi did before, is it available to stream as well?
It is. Okay. Naomi, is it still on Prime?
I'm not sure, but don't watch it there because our distribution company got bought by another distribution company that won't pay us, so they're keeping all that money.
Don't watch it there.
But watch it on Vimeo. Then we get that. I'll put them.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So that movie is called Imagine I'm Beautiful.
Great. And we'll watch it on Vimeo.
Yeah.
Christian, what are you working on?
Well, High Fidelity just came out on Hulu, which I'm in a couple of episodes of, so I highly recommend that. Particularly if you have a lot of free time at the moment. And I've just been directing a show that came back from Johannesburg that's all about death, so we're trying to work out if there's a place for it, since it's a subject people are talking about a lot at the moment. But right now everything's closed down. I'm prepping an audiobook and waiting to see if we're going to go ahead and record it. So High Fidelity for now is the thing to watch.
Excellent. On Hulu, yes.
Yes.
Mahira, what are you working on?
Thank you so much for having us. I wanted to say that, and also, yes, I'm working on the same things that you're working on, Meredith, staying sane and centered. And the series that I shot last year for BBC One, I think, is in post right now. I'm not sure when it's going to be out, but it's called A Suitable Boy, and I will type the name here for everyone. I'm not sure yet if it's going to be on Amazon, but I will let you know when it is.
Excellent.
I saw you recently, Mahira, on Louis C.K. I know I'm like very late to that party, but it was very fun to see you checking him out at the grocery store.
Yeah, that was a fun episode to shoot. He was very nice to the girls playing his daughters.
That's great. Sarah, what are you up to?
I have a feature film in post-production called The Volunteers. It's about a white supremacist militia and the people who are trying to escape them. So our distribution path is ever evolving at this time, now that things are sort of thrown up in the air, but I'll type the name of it here. So when we figure out what's happening with it, you can look it up. And I have 2 films that you can watch if you're bored on iTunes and Amazon and all those places. One's called That's Not Us, and the other one is called The Ring Thing. They're both sort of like relationship dramedies. And I was going to be on set this week, actually, in Indiana, shooting a short that I wrote. I'm not, because I want to keep people safe, but I'm very excited to make that once it's safe. It's about a young girl with healing powers.
Wonderful. Well, I hope that you all can get back to creating sooner rather than later. Naomi, you've got a book. Well, tell us about it. What else are you working on? Your book is amazing.
Yeah, I wrote a book that came out last month called The Wrong Kind of Women: Inside Our Revolution to Dismantle the Gods of Hollywood, which, as the title suggests, is a bit of a barn burner. It's about the fact that women are historically and currently have been almost completely excluded from having voices in the film industry in terms of creating content. Women are now 50% of film school graduates and direct less than 5% of the top studio films, not because they don't want to, but because they are being systematically excluded from the system. So the book is about how that's happening, how that's possible, how it has happened in the past, and what we can do about it. And that includes viewers. It's not just what we can do about it in the industry, but sort of like, and also it's about what the fact that our voices are missing is doing to your brains as you consume content that comes almost exclusively from the white male perspective. So that's available in hardcover, on audiobook, and ebook, wherever books are sold at the moment. I'm also working on my third feature film, which is tentatively titled Hammond Castle, and is about a 7-month pregnant woman that gets locked overnight in a castle full of famous ghosts. And we actually just may have received an opportunity to turn it into a radio drama during the quarantine, and release it early in that way before making the film, which would be so awesome. So hopefully that will be happening soon.
That is really cool.
You know, Naomi, I have a famous ghost right here.
Oh yes, you do, in your apartment. Yes.
I told you, because you came here. Peter Lawford lived right here. He was found bleeding out on my kitchen floor, right over there. And then his wife rushed into the hospital, and he died a week later. But he was right there.
Wow.
Now we're all going to go Google that.
Creepy.
I know where you live. Yeah. Well, I think you're always doing really great things, Naomi. And doing a radio series is just thinking, ahead of the curve. So good job. And I downloaded the Audible book and listened to it on my walks now that I'm walking a lot. So I recommend that you all do the same, because it's a great listen. I want to thank you all so much for joining us for this conversation. We'll post it and send people to watch the film on Prime and iTunes and wherever it is. But thank you for just being such wonderful creators and being generous with your time and being willing to talk to people about what you do. I think it really, really, like Bill said, it just having that connection makes it all real and gives us all this sense of community. And I can't thank you enough for spending an hour with us today. And
thanks for organizing this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And I'm happy that you all got to get together again, the Bite Me team. And I hope that we will be able to connect again soon with your next projects. I'm looking forward to checking everybody's work out. And everybody stay safe and healthy, and see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.